Obituary is now brought to you by Curtis & Son Funeral Home, the North Chapel on Highway 21 in Sylacauga, and the Childersburg Chapel on Highway 280 in Childersburg for pre-need funerals, burials, and cremation since 1975. Curtis & Son Funeral Home, Sylacauga, Childersburg, 256-245-4361. Funeral service for Dexter Blackman, age 74, of Childersburg, will be today at 2 p.m. from Curtis & Son Funeral Home, Childersburg Chapel, with burial in the Green Hill Cemetery. Reverend Mark Deason officiating. Curtis & Son Funeral Home, Childersburg Chapel directing. And Linda Burton obituary is funeral service is Saturday at First Baptist Church at Talladega at 11 o'clock. The station at 10 a.m. That's a celebration of life beginning at 11 o'clock at First Baptist Church in Talladega. Ursery Funeral Home, Talladega directing. Funeral service for Eddie H. Heath, age 78, is this morning at 11 o'clock from Terry's Metropolitan Mortuary. Terry's Metropolitan Mortuary directing. And also Emrys Aaron Bowman, age 82, of Birmingham. Funeral service 2 o'clock on Saturday at Mineral Springs Baptist Church in Pell City, with interment in the Bowman Cemetery. Ursery Funeral Home in Pell City in charge of the arrangements. Cameron Cosby, age 46, of Sylacauga, died Wednesday. And visitation is tonight, 5 till 7 at Radley Smith Funeral Home. Funeral service will be Saturday at 11 a.m. from the chapel of Radley Smith, with Pastor Stephen Upton officiating. Burial in the Salem Presbyterian Church Cemetery of Alpine. Following the graveside service, the family will be receiving friends at Trinity Lighthouse Church of God, where refreshments will be provided. Radley Smith Funeral Home in Sylacauga in charge of the arrangements. Funeral service for Billy Ray Thomas will be Saturday morning at 11 a.m. from Community Funeral Home in Sylacauga. Burial in the Africa Baptist Church Cemetery in Talladega. Visitation is today, 1 until 7 at the funeral home. Community Funeral Home, Sylacauga directing. Funeral service for LaDavian Morris will be Saturday at 1 p.m. from Community Funeral Home Chapel in Sylacauga, with burial in the Tallahatchie Baptist Church Cemetery in Calmugga. Visitation is today, 1 until 7 at the funeral home. Community Funeral Home, Sylacauga in charge of the arrangements. And visitation for Billy Ray Thomas will also be today, 1 until 7 at Community Funeral Home. Funeral service for Mr. Dante Beck, age 45, is 1 o'clock June the 26th at Terry's Mortuary Chapel. Visitation is Saturday, 1 until 6 at the funeral home. Terry's Metropolitan Mortuary directing. Funeral service for Mrs. Maddie Nolan, age 92, will be 11 o'clock on Saturday at Terry's Mortuary Chapel. Terry's Metropolitan Mortuary directing. Celebration of life for Mr. Jasper Wade will be 2 o'clock today at Terry's Mortuary Chapel, with interment in the St. Clair Memorial Gardens. Terry's Metropolitan Mortuary directing. Franklin McNeely, died at the age of 74. Community Funeral Home announcing. And memorial service for Mrs. Cynthia Denise Nelson Hurd, age 55, is 10:30 Saturday morning at Armour's Memorial Chapel in Alexander City. Armour's Memorial Funeral Home directing. And funeral service for Mr. Tommy Spencer will be 2 o'clock Saturday at Wright's Funeral Home in Alexander City. There will be a private interment. Visitation is today at the funeral home, 5 until 7. Wright's Funeral Home in Alexander City in charge of the arrangements. This obituary report this morning, courtesy of Curtis & Son Funeral Home, the North Chapel on Highway 21 in Sylacauga, and the Childersburg Chapel on Highway 280 in Childersburg for pre-need funerals, burials, or cremation since 1975. Curtis & Son Funeral Home, Sylacauga, Childersburg.